Well, how did we get to this point? Because you talk in the book about the fact that in the early days of television, policing was vilified in the popular culture. It's certainly not vilified in 2025.
No, it's really not. And it's so interesting to go back into that history and recognize that, oh, there was like a cultural feeling, the sentiment that policing was a problem, that policing was corrupt, that policing was more about social control than anything else. And certainly in the early days of television and movie making, police were not seen as a service to keep people safe at all. It was like no one would have thought that. It's a very interesting, deliberate sleight of hand that policing agencies undertook when they started working with producers and media makers and culture makers to try to shift how police were seen in the public, to ensure that they would maintain power in our societies. And this comes from a concerted effort by an international body of policing that still exists today in the early 1900s, discussing how they wanted to shift their perception in the UK, in the United States, in the UK's colonies, elsewhere. And that's when you start to see television shows, radio shows start to portray police as heroes. And in some cases, legislation is passed to prevent police and crime being portrayed in particular ways.
The Hays Codes, I think you call it.
That's right. The Hays Code in the United States. You start to see films that venerate, for example, the RCMP in Canada. And the Hays Code in particular was really, really influential because it prevented the creation of media that would portray the police as duplicitous. And so you start to get media that no longer reflects the culture, but then shifts culture as well into getting people to believe that police are these personal heroes.
I suppose the TV program Dragnet was really a blockbuster hit.
The story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Was that the first example of Hollywood collaborating with the LAPD and other police forces to create programming, to create stories?
If not the first, certainly one of the first. And yeah, that collaboration is really, really important in the history of policing because what they did was to say, like, look, here we are in Hollywood. We need permits. We need security. It would be really great if the police provided that. And also, we're creating this police show. How can we get you to help us? And the police are like, well, we would love to have final say over your scripts. We would love to have a say in how you're portraying police in this police show. And so therein begins this incredible partnership where even J. Edgar Hoover of FBI fame gets involved in the curation of these scripts of how police are going to be portrayed. So even things as interesting as, like, the LAPD did not have a very diverse force and were going after Black and Mexican communities with regularity. If you were watching Dragnet and the shows that came after it and its legacy shows, it seemed like a diverse force where they had Black police officers, and it was really a quite diverse place because they were trying to portray themselves as something different than what they really were.
And you highlight this relationship between Hollywood and policing because you think that these stories really help to shape public consciousness about police.
Oh, yeah. This idea that people have of defunding the police being absurd is because they have this belief that policing is attached to safety. And tons of studies, tons of data, stories, ethnographic research, anything that you could think of to get information about whether or not that is the case will prove that wrong. So how does something that is so absolutely incorrect become ingrained in the minds of most people when they're considering police? Well, it's because most people don't interact with police at all. That's number one. And two, most people feel like they know a lot about police because they have what they feel like is these stories that tell them what the police do, who the police are, and what they accomplish day to day.
And they're getting most of that information from TV, from movies?
Yeah, that's right. They're getting most of that information from television, movies, and the news. Those are the places where people create this myth of what the police are and what they do. And the people who really are harmed by that myth are Black people, Indigenous people, and other marginalized groups who have to bear the brunt of what the police really do.